Hello, delegates. Thank you for giving me the chance to meet with you, if only virtually today. It's your 50th anniversary as an organization, and I bet for some of you it feels like it's been 50 years since we were able to actually meet in person. COVID time can stretch out in a funny way. Let me begin by thanking you. Most of you, many of you, have been laying yourselves on the line for over a year now, working yourselves to exhaustion, fighting the good fight on behalf of the people of Alberta against this COVID monster. You haven't been helped much by your provincial government, I'm afraid. And now we're in the third wave, and many of you must be very stressed. I imagine some of you are angry, maybe angry at those people who continue to deny the facts and flaunt the public health rules. But all the way through, you've given so much, and you've done so much to serve the public, to protect their health. And on their behalf, I thank you. And secondly, let me congratulate Mike on his re-election. So well deserved. Mike has done just a great job as your president, facing huge challenges, my goodness. And in the face of those, in the face of the incredible workload that he's got, he's always striving to do better at serving the members of HSAA. I really give him a lot of credit for that. He's been a very strong member of the national board as well, a very positive role there. And I have mixed feelings about the next point because I want to congratulate Leanne and welcome her and look forward to working with her. I expect great things from her, but I'm sorry to see Trudy step down. She's been an incredible representative of HSAA Alberta, valued member of the national board, a strong role in the finance committee, a real champion, such an asset to HSAA. But she's given a lot, hasn't she? She deserves the chance to step down and be a retired person and relax and enjoy life. Did I mention challenges? Your government is measurably the worst in Canada, I think. Brian Pallister in Manitoba sometimes runs you a close second, but I think your Jason Kenney still takes the first worst prize. The things that he's done, Bill 30 opened the door wide open to privatization of healthcare in Alberta, the privatization of the provincial labs that he wants to pull off, the cuts to education, for heaven's sake, the attacks on your wages, the same heroes that he was talking about. He wants to take back some of the money that you've already earned, and he wants to cut your wages going forward. Bill 32, an attack on your right to an effective union. He wants to weaken the ability of your union to have a public voice. He wants to make it harder for your union to fight things like Bill 30, which directly affects your job. It makes no sense. It's terrible legislation. And it's also inept legislation, because after how many months they still haven't got the regulations in place, because it really is almost impossible to make that law effective. And there's a huge delay in the regulations because nobody can figure out exactly what to do next. So it's not only bad law, it's inept law, ideological law with no basis in reality. In your union, boy, you did a historic and unprecedented and a wonderful member-to-member campaign, an outreach campaign. It was really amazing, and we were glad to have helped. The National Union, our fellow components across the country, had almost as many people from the outside working on the campaign as you did from the inside. And it was really such an inspiration to all of the people that we had working with you on that campaign. There's just know going forward that on the direct campaign and on fighting the legal basis for the bill, on all of the ways that we're going to fight Bill 32, you're not fighting by yourselves. The National Union is right there with you. Our lawyers and your lawyers are working really closely together. We're doing everything we can to work with you to defeat this bill. And we will continue to work to defeat the bill until it's shredded and until sanity is restored. We got lots of stuff on our plates, of course, not just in Alberta, but across the country. Healthcare in most of our provinces was weaker than it should have been going into the pandemic because of too many years of austerity. Long-term care was exposed for the rank failure that it was in so many different places. For-profit long-term care was exposed as a critical failure to look after our seniors the way they deserved. Home care should have been there for people who didn't want to be moved into long-term care. And it was not well established across the country. It was ragged, it was piecemeal. Long-term home care should have been a way to get into long-term care. It should have been a continuous stream, and it wasn't. It was very ineffective. Childcare was missing in action at the beginning of the COVID campaign and the COVID pandemic. And as a result of it being missing, it was so obvious how badly it was needed. People who were like you, who were told they had to go to work because they were essential services, had no place in many provinces to have their children looked after. It was a dreadful situation. And I think finally we've made some progress in getting the attention of governments to how absolutely necessary a good childcare system is. And inequality. Inequality made the effects of the pandemic worse. People who were at the lower end of the income scale suffered more illnesses, more deaths, unfortunately. And inequality was made worse by the pandemic. The rich got richer and the poor got poorer, as the old song says. Now, we've made some progress in some of these areas. The federal budget just came down the day before I'm recording this. We haven't fully analyzed it yet, but there are some progress for sure in the federal budget. One of the things that's missing is any attempt to really fundamentally alter the revenue base for governments. Because what we're going to face coming out of the pandemic is that governments across the country are going to say, some of the worst provincial governments like yours are already starting to say it, that they've spent all the money on COVID. There's no money left for public services. Now they're going to have to cut wages, they're going to have to cut programs, they're going to have to cut jobs. It's not true, by the way. Most of the money that was spent by provincial governments across the country was in fact federal government money. But it's also not just not true, it's also dangerous, because austerity now at the provincial level would further weaken our economy, could drive us right into the ditch. If a public sector job is cut, it doesn't just mean that the public sector job is cut, it means there's also spin-off effects on the private sector, because the jobs that were then relying on that full-time job, jobs in stores and in restaurants and hotels, they get affected as well. And we know that you don't just cut one job when you cut a public sector job, you cut a spin-off effect in the private sector as well. And if you over-control public sector wages, where you cut wages or you say you can't get an increase because there's wage controls, you're cutting money that should be going back out into the community and should be spent in the local stores and in the local restaurants. And it has a terrible drag effect on the economy. So austerity is not only not necessary, it's dangerous. But you know what? In all of the discussions we hear about austerity, in all of the discussions we hear about public spending, what we don't hear very much at all about is fair taxation. And fair taxation is always the alternative to a cut, slash, and burn approach from your provincial government. You've heard about Boris Johnson, who's the conservative prime minister in the UK, a very conservative guy, ran from the right when he was running for election. He's announced the highest increase in corporate taxation in the UK that they've had for, I think, 30 to 40 years. Because even he understands that you need to have fair taxation if you're going to come out of a situation like the COVID crisis. And in the United States, they're talking about minimum standards for corporate taxation, because again, they understand how necessary it is that we get some fairness back into our tax system after 20, 25, 30 years of cuts to the corporate sector and to the wealthy. You've heard, of course, that we've all faced the COVID pandemic together. We're all in the same boat. Again, unfortunately, that's not true, because some of the boats were a lot higher up above the water than the rest of us were when we were sort of paddling to save our lives. We had a record-breaking 2,755 billionaires last year. And we had a combined net worth of those billionaires of $13.1 trillion. I don't really know how much a trillion is. It's beyond my capacity to think about it. It's a lot of money. And that was an increase of $8 trillion from the year before. So during the pandemic, it isn't just that the rich got richer, they got incredibly richer. And so what we need is wealth taxes and taxes that would make the distribution of income so much fairer in this society. I talked about world figures. In Canada, the wealth of Canadian billionaires went up by $78 billion during the course of the pandemic. $78 billion went to the pockets of a very few people. So it isn't like we don't have enough money to resolve the spending that we had during COVID. It's that we aren't taxing fairly enough. Corporate taxes have been cut, taxes for the wealthy have been cut, and that needs to be reversed. We need to be able to say we have a solution to the fact that we have deficits and debts. And one of the solutions is to grow the economy. And the other solution is to tax fairly the corporate sector and the wealthy. And one of the things that we're always told is that if you increase taxes on corporations, you're going to hurt jobs. And if you cut taxes on corporations, you're going to create jobs. They're going to create jobs. I know Jason Kenney used that line over and over again when he cut corporate taxes to the lowest in Canada. But you know what? That isn't true either. We've been study after study. There has never been a study that shows that cutting corporate taxes increases jobs. It just doesn't happen. What happens is that when you cut taxes for the wealthy, what you do is you increase their wealth. You don't pay as much in taxes, you put more in your pocket. That's all that happens. There is no job creation. Corporate tax cuts to the wealthy do not create jobs. They simply don't. There's no evidence of that at all. So look, you've done a great job fighting to protect the health of Albertans. And we've all done a great job fighting for better public services, which we all need and deserve and can pay for. We'll continue those fights past COVID because the public knows, and we know, that we can't go back to normal. We don't want to go back to normal because the old normal wasn't working for us. We want to move to a new normal, a fairer and better society. We look forward to working with you as we all fight that good fight together. Thanks for listening.